Roots holy grows, wings set me free. Spirit of light, come to me, come to me.
Good morning.
Good morning.
It is so great to be here. I'm so glad to be here.
Welcome back.
Thank you so much. Welcome to all who are here this morning to celebrate the beginning of this day at the Unitarian Universalist Fellowship of the Rappahannock. A special welcome to all the mothers who are here. Happy Mother's Day.
They're here.
We welcome and cherish all who come to the fellowship. We strive to assist all to be more peaceful, thoughtful, loving, and generous people. We are a place of calm in a tumultuous world. A very special welcome to any first-time visitors. Please stay with us and visit after the service to share refreshments and conversation. Our members join together to do the work necessary to sustain our fellowship. We're fortunate to have many talented people in our fellowship and in our greater community who are willing to share their experiences, interests, and insights with us on Sunday mornings. Today we have someone from our fellowship, my husband Eddie Correia, who will speak to us about how we might find peace in a troubling world. At this time, please silence your cell phones. We come from many places, along different paths, bringing different truths. We come with different histories and different realities. And yet we come together as one people. That worked well. May our lit chalice remind us that we are a people taught by different stories, with many voices, but always one people, working for a world where love creates justice and justice gives birth to peace. For opening words this morning, I have two rather short poems that I think are apt, both because it's Mother's Day and because we are going to be talking, Eddie's going to be talking later about trying to find peace in a troubling world. The first poem is Morning Song by Sylvia Plath. Love set you going like a fat gold watch. The midwife slapped your foot soles and your bald cry took its place among the elements. Our voices echo, magnifying your arrival. New statue. In a drafty museum, your nakedness shadows our safety. We stand round blankly as walls. I'm no more your mother than the cloud that distills a mirror to reflect its own slow effacement at the wind's hand. All night your moth breath flickers among the flat pink roses. I wake to listen. A far sea moves in my ear. One cry, and I stumble from bed, cow-heavy and floral in my Victorian nightgown. Your mouth opens clean as a cat's. the window square whitens and swallows its dull stars. And now you try your handful of notes. The clear vowels rise like balloons. This second poem is by A. Shea, who is a young poet. Wash the sadness from your soul in those whispered waves of hope, the quiet voice that knows how deep your strength is. And now we will sing hymn number 100. I've got Peace Like a River, and I believe that Molly is going to lead us.
Let us sing the 5 number verses. So we'll sing 1, 3, and 5.
Okay.
Peace like a river, I've got peace like a river. I've got peace like a river in my soul. I've got peace like a river. I've got peace like a river. I've got peace like a river in my soul. I've got love like an ocean. I've got love like an ocean. I've got love like an ocean in my soul. I've got love like an ocean. I've got love like an ocean. I've got love like an ocean in my soul. I've got tears like the raindrops. I've got tears like the raindrops. I've got tears like the raindrops in my soul. I've got tears like the raindrops. I've got tears like the raindrops. I've got tears like the raindrops in my soul.
And now is the time when we share with the rest of the fellowship joys that we have experienced recently so that we may magnify them, and also concerns that are weighing us down so that we may share the burden. So please, if you have a joy or concern to share, you can please share it briefly, and you're welcome to come up and share your joy or concern and put a piece of sea glass in the chalice.
I have a joy and I have a concern. My joy is that I finished the workshop classes that we had on Tuesday nights that Diana and Tom Coy led, and it was a pledge for justice and racial. It was wonderful, and if you haven't done it before, which I think so many of you have, please do it, because it's just so eye-opening. Thank you.
I don't know whether people have been trying to contact me lately, but I've had a world of trouble with my cell phone. I don't know, I guess people who were born when cell phones were born probably have no problems handling that kind of thing. But when I look at the screen, whatever the screen is, it just, it's just totally mind-boggling, let's say. But my joy is that I have a new phone, and it works. I just have to kind of find out how to work it. And I don't know actually where to go, but a couple of people have given me some ideas. So anyway, that's it for me.
I have two joys this morning. One, that my sister Linda is here from Colorado, joined me this week, and she's a UU also, so all this is familiar to her. I also have a joy that Carolyn is back with us today, and I know I speak that joy for the entire congregation.
I too welcome Carolyn back after grueling battles with getting that leg better. I also spent the week, Hank and I spent the week in DC with friends every night. We had this, it was just like a party every night, and we don't do that very often, so it really was energizing to Hank. He's sleeping it off, but it was wonderful. Yesterday morning, my daughter took me for a pedicure, and that was wonderful. Early Mother's Day. I'm going to drop another one in for daughter Molly.
Here, speaking for Donna, she wanted to be here today, but her boys are coming up for Mother's Day. But she'll be back to see everybody coming soon as she gets scheduled in with her new work job. She wanted me to let everybody know that Lois was in the hospital last week for pneumonia and she was doing breathing exercise, but she's coming back today. That's the joy.
This is a joy, and it's a joy of memory. My mom, my grandmothers, my sisters, all the mothers in my life that have crossed my path, I wish them, wherever they are, happy Mother's Day. Some of them are no longer with us, some are. And to all of you here who have children and are celebrating Mother's Day today at some point, it's just a real delight to be able to recall some of the great memories that I have, and I hope you all will be making great new memories.
I will put this piece of sea glass in the chalice for all those joys or concerns that are not spoken but remain in our hearts. And now Eddie has something that he's going to walk us through. Thank you, Eddie.
Thanks, Carol. Turn to your order of service. This is going to seem like a little bit of a geometry class this morning. But take a look at this diagram. It's got on the y-axis, as you may remember from geometry, other love, and on the x-axis, self-love. Now, so look at these different numbers and think through what people are like in those different positions. Now, one, a very sad situation, really. People who, that's probably of some form of mental illness where you just don't have an affect. You cannot make a connection with others, and you don't have love for yourself. Three is someone who maybe has devoted their life to other people. Maybe on the good side, you might think of a religious order or something like that, but where they make an intentional decision to do that. Then you have the sad cases where someone sacrificed themselves for their parents or someone else, and they have left themselves out. So not a good situation to be a number three. Number two is probably some form of narcissism, an extreme form, and you can think of people who might have that quality. Most of us are probably at 4, somewhere in 4, and you can decide how you're balanced. Obviously, you want to be in that middle region somewhere. And what I'm going to suggest to you is that 5 is where we want to be. And we might think of 5 as our higher self. And when I talk about finding peace later, I want to refer back to this.
Thank you, Eddie. Now let us take a few moments to reflect on what Eddie just described to us and where we think each of us wants to be on that scale. And now it's time for a presentation by Eddie Correia, my husband, who is a longtime member of the UUFR and I think well known to most of you. But for those who may not know him well, he's an attorney, a practicing attorney, and also a law professor and an author of several books. So Eddie is going to talk with us today about how do we find peace in a troubling world?
Thanks, Carol. Well, I don't think I need to convince you that the world is troubling, pretty troubling and troubled. We've got a big election coming up that stirs political divisions and really strong feelings. Congress seems to be dysfunctional at times. We've got a war in Gaza, which is absolutely horrible. We've got a situation in Sudan with the civil war that's terrible. We've got climate issues around Ukraine. Very, very difficult as we look around the world. So what I want to talk about today is how in the face of that can we find peace? Now, not bliss, and not all the time, but perhaps a lot of the time we can find some peace. So let's get at it this way. Imagine yourself in the middle of a set of concentric circles. The first circle is just you, it's just your mind, just your thoughts, however analytical they are, however directed they are, whether they're just, you do meditation and you focus on your breath, or you just go reflect somewhere about everything going on in your life. That's your inner world. That's with you all the time. Even if you're not conscious, your mind is working. But that's your immediate private mental world. Then the next circle, let's say, is your immediate physical world. What you feel, what you see, good and bad, the sunshine, the breeze, hugging others, working in the garden, being out on the water by yourself. If you're in a bubble bath, I don't know, do people do that anymore? Whatever it is, it's the immediate physical world. Nobody is in that but you. Nobody's experiencing it but you. Now, let's call these two circles your inner band, your inner life. You can choose to share those thoughts with others or keep them private. As far as we know, no one can invade that space and find out what you're thinking. Now, maybe as technology develops, that will change, but as far as we know, that is private. Now, let's say there's a second band that's the next outward from you, and that has to do with our relationships. And we start, with our partner, with our most intimate companion, our spouse. And as we expand the circle, we have our close family relationships, our children, our parents. Then larger communities, our very close friends, something like this fellowship, our neighbors, our people we know at work. So we have a personal relationship. So the common characteristic, we'll call this the relationship band. is that you have a relationship with all these people, sometimes very close, sometimes more distant, but you know these people, you have a relationship with them. Now, outside that band are people we don't know. We hear about them, we know they exist, but we really don't have that relationship with them. Now, I could make this pretty complicated and have a whole bunch of circles, but let's simplify it and say that there's the country and then there's the world outside our country. So we'll call this the outer band. Now, you can have trouble in all these circles, of course, but what I want to focus on is the outer band and being troubled by what's going on in that outer band. And the project is to find peace in spite of what's going on in that outer band. Now, if we look at our country, we could have a long list. You know, we got border issues, we've got climate issues, abortion, however you feel about that. We've got the Supreme Court. We've got a big election coming up. Now, you might be terrified Biden will be elected. You might be terrified Trump will be elected. But the point is you're terrified. Now, I was talking to Carolyn about, have we had elections that seem this momentous? Maybe you always hear this election is so momentous, but if you look back, we're talking about when we were younger and starting to work on the Hill, the Carter-Reagan election seems so important. Now, looking back, it doesn't seem that monumental. Before that, you had LBJ and Goldwater. That was probably pretty significant how the country would go then. You go all the way back to 1864, that's Lincoln and McClellan. That was very significant. We could have had, if McClellan elected, we had two countries today. So that was probably momentous. I'll let you judge how momentous this one was, but the point is it feels momentous. Now it does. Now you go up to the next band, and as I say, that's Gaza and the war in Ukraine and struggles with China and North Korea. Climate change, poverty in general, immigration and border issues around the world. In a way, it does seem like there's just a lot of suffering, more suffering than in the past. Whether that's true or not, that's the way it feels. Now, one reason it feels that way is we're bombarded by information. We're bombarded by, press stories 24 hours a day. So the question is how to deal with all that, how to deal with that outer band. Now, people take different approaches. So let's think about different approaches. One is denial. One is to just say, I don't think there's a problem out there. I deny there's a problem. Ignore the news. What's on the news is fake anyway. And so there are some people who do that. I doubt people in this room do that, but there are certainly people who do that. It's very difficult to do that with modern news media. It wasn't difficult to do that 100 years ago, or certainly before that. You weren't bombarded by news media, but we are bombarded by it. And so it's very difficult just to deny what's going on. Another strategy, which is probably more successful for a lot of people, is just don't care. That's probably the approach of most people in the world. Okay, there's a war in Ukraine. I don't really care about that. I don't know those people. Remember, the definition of that outer band is we don't have a relationship with those people. Now, to me, that's a very selfish, narrow-minded way to get at the problem, but no doubt some people follow it. A more respectable version of that, perhaps, is some forms of Eastern religion that really say the secret to happiness is to give up desire and really focus inwardly. There's a Hindu tradition of looking inward. There's certainly a Buddhist tradition of looking inward. Not saying Buddhists don't care, they do care. And compassion is very important to Buddhists. But the nirvana is a way of being released from all that. And just saying, I'm going to give up my desires about that. Not a good strategy in the West, not a very successful strategy for most people, certainly for some people. What is the problem, if you want to call it that? What's the underlying dynamic? It's the evolution of the human brain. One of the characteristics of a loving person, a loving human being, is that you do feel emotional pain from the suffering of people you don't know. Now, other animals, as far as we know, don't do that. Now, I don't know much about animal psychology, and I don't want to make too many claims about things that seem so mysterious that I don't know about. But I think it's probably true that animals, until the evolution of Homo sapiens and a larger brain, had certainly very strong instincts about offspring, instincts about pairing with someone, another partner. The offspring that live off our dock, as far as I know, they've been there about 6 or 7 years. That's longer than a lot of marriages. So that's very strong. But I don't think there's much of a cognitive component to it. Those osprey, they're aware, I'm sure they're aware because they fly by. They're aware of the osprey up the river. Do they care about them? I don't think so. Maybe I'll be proved wrong someday. But the point is that we care. Why is that? It's because the human brain evolved to have a much bigger cognitive component. Now, not everyone, as I said earlier, not everyone evolved or became adults with that view. Where did that come from? Probably from our parents, from our religious tradition, from our mothers. We're celebrating Mother's Day. But however we arrived at this point in our life, we do care. Now, given that we do, and I would say everyone in this room cares, what do we do about it to find some peace? Well, it seems to me we have to have some form of compartmentalization. Now, the word compartmentalization, it sounds like repression, and it is a little bit like repression, and repression sounds very negative. It has negative implications. It suggests that we're working hard to deny our feelings, working hard to just ignore them or put them in a corner somewhere. And that eventually we'll pay a price for that if we repress feelings. So I don't mean that, although I confess there is somewhat of an ambiguous line between the positive form of compartmentalization and a negative form of repression. But I'm talking about a positive form of that. Now, how do we do that in the best way? How do we compartmentalize? Well, one way is to go all the way back to that inner band. Just us, just our thoughts, just our experience of nature, just working in the garden and focusing on that, or just meditating and just thinking. And some people are successful with that, and everybody's probably successful with that to some extent. I mean, again, to go back to Eastern religion, I'm not sure how the Hindus pronounce that, fakirs, who really meditate. And that is their life. And they know how to meditate and they know how to control their mind. And they are admired for that. The secular Western example might be the academic or the scholar who functions in the life of the mind and reads and really, as the Greeks might say, the point of life is to give wisdom, and that's what they do. I don't think that works for most of us. It might work for some of us. So if the inner band is not the complete solution, what do we do? Well, I think the solution is in that relationship band. And how do we find peace there? I think that when we're dealing with the suffering of the world, that we find peace with all those relationships. You know, starting from the most inner band and expanding outward. And how do we do that in the best way possible? Well, this goes back to my diagram earlier, I think, that there has to be some balance between self-love and other love. And we want to expand both of those, as much as possible. And we want to live in that higher self as much as possible. And the good thing is that I think when we find peace in that relationship band, then it makes the inner life, the inner band, even better. Now, there's one more component I want to talk about that I'm going to use the word faith, but I don't mean faith in the religious sense. Faith is what is faith? I think faith is the way I think of it is that you have some hope for the future that's really not based on empirical evidence. You know, you sort of overestimate the odds. It's the drug addict in rehab that the odds are they're not going to make it, but they still try. So I think how does that apply in this case? Well, in some situations, let me start with, I think hope is not a strategy alone, but if you don't have hope, then you're not going to get started on a strategy. And to be willing to put energy into that strategy, you have to have some faith. And I think that's true for our country, and I think that's true for the world. So let's conclude this way. It feels like suffering is really overwhelming around the world in this outer band, and it feels worse than in the past. I don't think that's probably true. I think if you look at history, there's been massive suffering at every moment in human history. And you look at the 20th century, 2 world wars, a depression, Mao's radicalism, Stalin, really massive suffering around the world. 19th century wars in Europe, imperialism, brutal colonialism. And you keep going back in history, and it's the same story. So if it's true that there is always has been, and there is now, and there always will be, at least for the foreseeable future, massive suffering around the world, then we have to find peace in the face of that. Otherwise, we're never going to find peace. Now, we can't deny what's going on. That is a bad strategy. And I know you care. So, to me, in some sense, that we're going to find peace in those inner bands. And you can go all the way to the inner band and live in the inner band, but I don't think that works for most people. You can live there sometime. But I think what most of us are going to do, and what works for most of us, is going to be that relationship band. And finally, we have to have some hope, in fact. Okay, thanks.
Thank you, Eddie, for that. And Janet has very kindly volunteered to carry the microphone around for our discussion now. Thanks, Janet.
Anyone have, okay, I think we start there, Rich.
Or in the morning, I'll go out with the dog in the backyard and sit on my back steps at 7 o'clock in the morning in my bathroom and just look at everything. Look at the trees, look at the flowers, watch the dog chase squirrels. And that's one of my little joys. And I do that every day unless it's raining or snowing, pretty much.
Yeah, I don't want to.
Finding the joy, finding the life in little tiny things, quite literally, I think helps bring peace, at least for a few minutes.
Yeah. Well, that's the inner band, and I don't mean to understate the importance of the inner band, because I think it can be enormously important, and I think it can bring peace, as you say. It might not be for too long, but
Right, it's for fun.
I want to go back to what you said about animals and humans. Humans, the difference is we have thought versus perception. Animals have perception. I went to school in Miami, and there was a pond that was on our campus with 2 swans, and an alligator got one of the swans. For 2 years after that, the partner of that swan cried. It wasn't just that it was with it was mourning. And I've seen other animals mourn other animals. But the perception is what's in their perception. They're not thinking about things that they don't see or where they are. And the same thing goes with what you were saying about the Buddhist without hope. You can have desire and hope, but being attached to it it's not here for you right now. So you're being attached to something that doesn't exist. When you put everything into your perception of where you are and your relationships to where they are, you can be concerned about what's going on, but you're not caught in the world stuff. And that brings that, what you said, getting up to that number 5 area of relationships and self-love, being the love area.
yeah.
But yeah, I think you're right on with that whole chart.
Yeah, I don't know much about animal psychology. I said one thing very mean one time about Paula's pit bull, and I still feel guilty about it. But I think it's possible that we project, quite naturally, we project human feelings on animals when we watch them behave. And we see a compassion in them, because that's how we feel. I once read recently about turkeys, male turkeys. If you deny them access to female turkeys, they will begin to mate with anything that looks kind of like a turkey. Including a tennis ball on sticks. I don't think even the horniest teenage boy would try that. Well, I don't know. I'm not sure. I'm not totally sure about that. However, the point is that I think it's a lot more cognitive for us. But I don't know. We can't communicate with animals, so we really don't know what's going on with them. Maybe someday.
A little hesitant to go off on that issue about animals.
I'll say what. Let's conclude our animal psychology lecture with the turkey example.
I know you're a little bit hostile to it, but I'm going to do something because one of the really biggest issues in current biology and animal behavior is the question of altruistic behavior. And the examples that we've been giving are in that first reading of animals and sympathy. Whereas there are instances of dolphins and other cetaceans rescuing people at sea and clearly being interested in what for them is the outer band.
Yeah.
And I was just going to offer up one of my favorite examples of animal behavior not in the second, somewhere on the second or third level. a number of years ago, the National Museum in Washington, D.C. built a brand new, perfect exhibit display for jungle animals, particularly for birds. They're new atria. And it was part of the movement beginning at that time to create environments which are right for the animals, as opposed to for people looking in at the animals. And in addition to all the environmental attributes making it look just like a jungle, they also went out and recorded the noises of jungle birds at night and in the daytime to play so that the animals would feel at home orally as well. And what happened was the birds became very flustered, very sick, and they tried it for a couple of years to figure out why their birds were doing so poorly. And finally, somebody who really knew bird behavior and sounds went and discovered that the sounds that they were playing, that they had recorded in the jungle, were all alarm sounds that the birds were making. Hear these strange people in their environment with microphones and stuff.
They thought they were bringing peace to the
Right,
ground.
right. And so as soon as they took out those alarm sounds and put regular unstressed calls, and then the birds calmed down.
One is that the evolution of the human brain is a blessing and it's a curse. It's a blessing because we were able to think about things and make tools and write novels and symphonies. But the downside is that we have feelings about people in, Ukraine. The other thing is that I predict that as AI becomes a more important part of our life, that will prompt a reflection about what humans should care about, and how do we treat AI, and at what point do we think about their welfare in a much more human way. And I think that will lead us to think about animals too. Helen.
So thank you, Eddie, for a wonderful talk. It was so thought-provoking for all of us, and it made me think about how we here tend to be seekers. We are looking for answers. And you also said something that seemed important to me. It's about our attitudes about animals, which I thought that it involves projection. And I think both sides are projected. In fact, we have no way really of knowing. We're in our infancy of understanding of animal language and how much cognition to say. We're having AI try to figure out what whales are saying to one another. There are all kinds of things that we just don't know. So why is it so compelling for us to think of animals as not having the kind of cognition and worries that we have? People have thought that about other cultures. They thought that about children. People have often thought that about children. Their feelings don't really count. They're not human. People have repressed what it was like to be a child. So I think essentially we don't really know. However, we share this planet with other living beings, and we are limited in our ability to love and empathize with all of those beings because it's beyond us to solve the problems that come with that. And that's the issue that you're bringing up. How do we live here among one another as loving people? And I love that diagram in the 5 part as an ideal for us to love ourselves and love others. And it's a hard thing to do, but if we don't love ourselves and combine those two, then we're going to be much more unhappy.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for a thought-provoking talk. Somebody else, sorry.
I will say that I'm basically a UU but a humanist, and I don't believe in a God, but I do believe in people, and I believe in community, and that's that relationship band, I think, that keeps me sane these days, is I believe that inherently people are good. There are certainly some bad ones, but I think if most people are good, we can work together and solve the problems we have together. We may not be able to solve Ukraine's problems, but we can start with our community here.
Yeah.
I just wanted to say as a footnote to what you just said, that we should address the inhumanity of animal production, like the agribusiness, which is cruel. It's like a Holocaust for animals.
Anyone else?
Anybody else? Okay, thanks very much.
Please rise as you're willing and able to sing song number 212 in the hymnal, Are We Dancing Sarah's Circle? And please remain standing after the song for extinguishing the chalice and closing the words. We are dancing Sarah's circle. We are dancing Sarah's circle.
We are dancing Sarah's circle, sisters, brothers, all. Here we seek and find our history. Here we seek and find our history. Here we seek and find our history. Sisters, brothers, all. We will all do our own making. We will all do our own naming. We will all do our own naming. Sisters, brothers, all. Every round of generation, every round of generation, every round of generation, sisters, brothers, all. On and on the circles moving, on and on the circles moving, on and on the circles moving, sisters, brothers, all.
As we extinguish this chalice flame, we carry forward our cherished faith, our devotion to each other, and our belief in the dignity and worth of all people. May our work together assure that tolerance, forgiveness, and justice will one day be embraced and practiced by all in our nation and across the earth. And any closing words?
Well, let me just close with this, that we're not going to deny suffering, and we're going to feel it, but let us have faith that humanity will rise to the occasion.